Next, we're going to bring Brian Summers up so that he can introduce Tia Capps, our speaker from Chattanooga.
Let's see who Brian is.
Brian Summers is the VP of MasterCam in Tolland, Connecticut.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Brian. I couldn't quite see my notes, so I had to go get them enlarged. So luckily, they had a nice print services booth next door. But I'm from MasterCam. Who's heard of MasterCam? Wow. Okay, so you guys know who I am, so I don't have to say anything. No, so we're right in Tolland, Connecticut, and we're the makers. CNC Software is the name of the company. So we develop MasterCam there. We sell it in 90 countries around the world. We have about 160 employees, and basically the idea for our software program is it runs CNC machines. So we're proud to support this event. Community is kind of a core to our beliefs at MasterCam. Ever since the early 80s, we've promoted MasterCam in schools, gave great school discounts. We actually have an entire educational reseller channel devoted just for schools. So the things that the students are able to make in schools are amazing. So a little bit about Makerspace. We're happy to be involved with Brian and Deborah, two very dynamic people, a lot of energy, and so really the idea is to eventually have a space that supports the community within Hartford. That's so important. It allows inventors, people that want to, from a project-based standpoint, people that want to learn, create a project, perhaps do some type of benchmarks. So we now have a facility, or eventually have a facility, that you can go and test these things out. So it's pretty exciting. And it really engages the community.
Don't be nervous. It's streaming live on the web. You're worldwide right now.
Oh, okay. I'm not nervous. It's all set. So really this whole idea of project-based learning is terrific. So it's a little bit different than learning a software program or learning, specific machines. The idea is you have the whole project in mind, and then you eventually learn the things that you need to do to make that project. So it's great. And again, we think it strengthens the community, which is, again, a goal for MasterCam. And we're just excited to be part of it. I was just in, actually, Europe, I'll mention quick, at Sweden, Germany, and UK, just got back last night. And it's amazing to see there how integrated quality students learning is in other countries. So it's good to be part of strengthening the economy here in the United States and the whole learning process. So with that, we have a guest speaker who's hopefully a lot better than me. And her name is Tia Capps. So Tia Capps she's the communications director from, it's called the Company Lab, CoLab. Tia serves as the communications director for the Company Lab as a nonprofit startup accelerator that supports entrepreneurial growth in Southeast Tennessee. Located in Chattanooga, home of the nation's fastest internet, the organization also helps lead the regional effort to stimulate entrepreneurial activity around the city's gigabit network in industries such as additive manufacturing. In her role at CoLab, Tia manages press release, public outreach, and community engagement. She also leads the media and marketing strategy for Gigatank, a national accelerator program that allows entrepreneurs to test and launch high bandwidth businesses applications for the Gigabyte network. Prior to joining CoLab team in 2013, Tia served as a writer and communications coordinator for the Chattanooga area Chamber of Commerce. Tina has her bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Georgia. She's a native to Chattanooga, Tennessee, an active member of the local business community, and one of the growing number of millennials who are choosing to build their careers in the gig city. And with that, I'll introduce Tia Capps.
Thank you. And I thank you guys all for having me here today. I want to start off by really asking you guys to give a round of applause to the wonderful people who put this together. I had dinner with them last night. Yeah. I was blown away by the passion and the excitement and the work that has been put into this. And so that really encourages me because we're working on the same thing in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Has anyone here ever been to Chattanooga? Oh my gosh, a couple of you have. This is great. Okay. So I'm from Chattanooga, and I work for an organization called CoLab. We are an economic development organization, and we help people start businesses. We run a startup accelerator, and then we also provide a range of services throughout the year that exist outside of that accelerator as well. Gig Tank is one of our biggest programs. That's our startup accelerator, and it is designed to help entrepreneurs who have high bandwidth business applications turn them into businesses. Chattanooga is home of the fastest internet in the country. We have now 10 gigabit speed internet that's available to every home and business in the city limits. I think the reason that I'm here today, as we were talking last night, why does making matter? For us in Chattanooga, we think that making is important to our local economy. And so we've actually started investing resources in that. We are a smaller city. We have about 173,000 people in the city proper, and about 544,000 people region-wide. We are the home of Coca-Cola bottling. So Coca-Cola was made in Atlanta, but the franchising and bottling happened in Chattanooga. So that's why we see Coca-Cola all over the world now. And then it's also the subject of Glenn Miller's Chattanooga Choo Choo song. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that, but it's kind of a landmark in our city. So a couple of years ago, and this is when I was first coming back to Chattanooga, a lot of people hadn't heard of our city. And we've undergone a lot of change over the last 6 years. But really over the last couple of decades, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how we've continued to reinvent ourselves over the past couple of years to stay relevant and to attract business and to build business up from within. But our culture, I guess, of reinvention began in the early 70s. So in 1969, Walter Cronkite described Chattanooga as the dirtiest city in the country. And that was true. We sit in a bowl. So Chattanooga is surrounded by mountains. We have a river bisecting the city, and we're in a valley. And so we were traditionally a foundry town. So manufacturing is very important to us, but that really affected our air quality. And so we didn't want to be known just for being the dirtiest city. So this happened, and we decided after that, we had also been suffering from a lot of job loss after, manufacturing started declining. So we had a community of people that decided to come together and develop a public visioning process to talk about what we wanted our city to look like in the future. And from that came an incredible number of plans that have continued to transform our city over the years. So this is a picture of what Chattanooga looked like back in the early 70s. Not very attractive, not a whole lot of life going on in the city center. And this is what it looks like today. We feel like we've made a lot of progress, and we're really proud of it. So this is kind of CBS has reported on this as well. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the process of coming together and coordinating as a community, because that's super important to maker communities. And so in Chattanooga, as we've tried to develop that, we've applied this kind of thinking that began back in the 1980s to what we're doing today. And I hope that it's something that it seems like you guys have already really embraced the idea of coordination and collaboration. And so, I think one of the reasons that a lot of communities like to hear from us is because we're a small city, we're kind of an underdog. we don't have a whole lot of resources. And so we've actually been able to pull off a number of really interesting reinventions with very little resources, but the only way we've been able to do that is by coordinating with one another. So, as I said earlier, Chattanooga was experiencing a lot of steady decline in the 80s. We launched a community visioning process in '82. And part of that was completely transforming our waterfront. We ended up moving a highway off the rivers, taking up valuable real estate. And I heard that you guys are talking a little bit about your waterfront here, which is kind of interesting to me. So that was really the first phase of our reinvention. The part that I was involved in began back in 2010. We became America's first gig city. So we have a local municipal utility that provides power, and they decided to install a fiber optic network that made 1 gigabit per second internet speeds available. That's not the track that most cities take, but we had some really forward-thinking leaders at EPB. And so what they did was they did it to update the power system, the power distribution system, so they needed to install a smart grid. And then they got federal stimulus funds to build out a larger communications network. As someone who was part of the team trying to let people know that we have this resource, it was really hard to get people to believe us at first. We saw gigabit internet as an opportunity to attract a business. This is fertile territory for, application development. We have the internet of the future here. And so we need to get people to figure out what to do with it, and we need to figure out what to do with it. Getting that message out was really hard because a lot of journalists didn't really believe that we had it at first, so we actually had to get some of them to come down to the city and test it out. And then finally, the New York Times published an article naming Chattanooga as the city with the fastest residential internet speeds. Since then, things have picked up quite a bit, fortunately. We had Thomas Friedman come to town in 2012, and he really inspired our city to think about new ways that we could be using our assets to develop new innovations in Chattanooga. And part of that conversation inspired our thinking around the maker movement. So, with that in mind, let me backtrack for a minute and say GigTank was born out of this new asset that we had, this incredible internet infrastructure. So it's a startup accelerator, and it's designed specifically for people to use that technology. So we started that process, and we were actually able to bring in entrepreneurs from all over the world to test applications on our network. When we did that, that kind of got us thinking about what else we could do. Since the subject area was so broad, we decided maybe we should specialize in a certain area. And from there, we decided to potentially dip our toes into 3D printing. I'm just going to ignore these slides and tell you guys how it actually happened. So in 2013, our public library hosted a Maker Day. They brought in makers and 3D printers and really didn't publicize it too much. This is when we were running GigTank, and our executive director went to that Maker Day, and about 800 people showed up at our public library. They hardly advertised that it was going to happen, and the reason that so many people did end up showing up is because when people arrived, they started calling their friends and posting things on social media, and then there was a line out the door to get into our library, and that had never happened. This was the same year that our library opened a makerspace on the fourth floor. And so this was sort of their big debut to the public. Our executive director was at Maker Day, and from there he kind of got an idea. After fiddling around with the 3D printers, he started doing some research and discovered that there might be some interesting overlap between additive manufacturing and ultra-high-speed internet. Because when you think about the large files that are required to transfer when you're using 3D printers, especially in an industrial setting, latency is a big issue, and time is money. Not only that, but transferring these files requires a lot of cloud computing, and our network can accommodate that in milliseconds. We are also talking a lot about how in the future we see 3D printing involving a lot of machine-to-machine communication, which is going to be really important to be able to modulate that. And so from there, the idea was born to open GigTank up into an accelerator for 3D printing startups. And that happened in 2014. No one else had done it at that point, which is really surprising to me, that in 2014 there was not a startup accelerator specifically for 3D printing companies. And so we retooled our entire accelerator and launched it. That year and everything that's happened since has left an incredibly lasting impact on our city. And I can say definitively that the successes and the businesses that have grown out of that gig tank far outstrip what we've seen people do with our internet. And so that was a bit of a wake-up call for us. Now, we definitely ask our entrepreneurs to look at the intersections between 3D printing and the internet, but we open the doors to everybody. And so that started, I guess, in this probably the spring, winter of 2014, and we were launching the program that summer. And so we had no printers, we had no industry contacts. We didn't have any of the things that we really needed to provide a meaningful experience. But our executive director really had a vision, and he was like, no, we can do this, we can pull this off. And by God, we did. We didn't sleep a lot that year, but we made it happen in a really short period of time. We were actually able to develop relationships with the largest manufacturers of 3D printing equipment. We were able to bring on 3D Systems and Stratasys as sponsors, and we worked really closely with our local university and our local technical college to open up the equipment that they have at their schools to our entrepreneurs. That was key to being able to provide the technology that our entrepreneurs were going to need to experiment. So from there, we also were able to bring in mentors from all over the country. And one of the biggest things that we did to make this accelerator work was we recruited in some experts from out of town because we didn't have any in Chattanooga. So we found our boy genius. His name is Graham Bredemeyer, and he's now an entrepreneur. Didn't think he could be one. And we hired him to come down and lead this 3D printing accelerator, and he brought some of the people that he knew in the industry. And so a lot of credit should really go to him and to the network that he was able to pull around our accelerator in such a short period of time. But by the time the program began, we had all the experts, all the resources that we needed to really help launch some interesting companies, and we did. Let me run through some of these real quick. We talked a little bit about this. Yeah, another thing that we did, so I want to mention, we didn't just bring in people from the outside. So we worked with our local universities, but also our local manufacturing base. Chattanooga is a manufacturing city, and advanced manufacturing is becoming increasingly important. And so what we did was we worked with the Chamber of Commerce to connect with local manufacturers that could provide advising on some of the problems that they were experiencing at their companies, and then bring in our entrepreneurs to think about ways that 3D printing could solve those problems. That led to the creation of companies we didn't expect to see in the accelerator. And a lot of credit goes to the Chamber of Commerce for really stepping into their network and making calls and getting local manufacturers in the same room with us so we could talk about how we might stimulate entrepreneurial activity that benefits their businesses. Could we function as a little bit of an R&D department for a while? Could they help us with pilot partnerships if some of our entrepreneurs have applications they want to run? They ended up really pitching in, and that was a huge part of our program's success. Another thing I'd like to mention is we also recruited in some of the leading speakers and thinkers in the 3D printing movement. And part of that was to start a conversation, because we need public buy-in, right? Like, if we're going to be able to continue to create an environment in which 3D printing innovations can thrive, and in which 3D printing businesses might have a chance to survive or grow in the marketplace, we really need to have people buy into it and understand the potential. So to help educate the public about what 3D printing was and how it could influence manufacturing moving forward, we brought in some experts throughout the entire process to keep the conversation going and making sure that everyone was a part of it. So before they came in, we would talk to them about who's in the audience and what they need to know about additive manufacturing and how it might impact their company. So I think the best speaker that we were actually able to bring in was Terry Wohlers, and he is the world's foremost authority on the 3D printing industry. He produces the Wohlers Report, which reflects global trends in adoption and how the technologies are evolving. And he was able to come and tell people, especially decision makers in Chattanooga, that this is something you should really, your local economy should invest in. Here are the numbers. Here's why. Here's how it could impact your companies moving forward. Something that's really important to us in Chattanooga after experiencing the loss of our foundries in the 70s and 80s, we're sensitive to, losing manufacturing jobs, especially as, we're bringing more robots into play and people are becoming obsolete on the production line. So it's really important to us that our local manufacturing companies aren't getting left behind. And that was a message that I think he did a really good job of driving home with people, and really enabled us to work with legislators and decision makers to create the right conditions we need to keep this movement going in Chattanooga. On the topic of culture, there was another thing that we did. We understood that this can't just happen from a business perspective. It also needs to be part of the local culture, which gets us out of 3D printing and into the maker world. The person that we brought in to help run our Gig Tank program for 3D printing companies, Graham Bredemeyer, had also started the first maker fair in his hometown in Indiana. And so part of the deal in bringing him down was we asked him to start one in Chattanooga as well. And so he was actually able to do that, and a lot of people came together to pull that off for us. A really important thing, as you all know, with making is getting people to interact with the making experience. And so we didn't just want to focus on entrepreneurs, but also future entrepreneurs. So this was a way for us to bring entrepreneurs together with kids who might be makers and entrepreneurs one day. It's really good for conversation building as well. I mean, as you can see, the incredible things that are here. It really has become part of our regular discussion about Chattanooga. I think one of the most incredible things we've seen is that Chattanooga has begun to identify itself as a maker city, and a lot of people reflect that in their conversations about our community. This is something that people feel as part of them as well. And we've seen a lot of growth just in terms of the maker spaces that are popping up in our community and the schools and kids that are getting involved. We help a local organization, a local education organization host an event we call Teacherpreneur, where we have teachers bring their ideas for the classroom and then pitch it business style, and then we work with them to find ways to implement them or to maybe take them to other cities if it ends up working. And I was lucky enough to be a judge at our last Teacherpreneur, and almost all of the ideas that came in were maker focused. And before, like 2 years prior to that, those conversations weren't really happening. And so we're really excited that local educators have really begun to embrace this movement. And we feel like that's just as important to our local economy as the entrepreneurs we're working with right now. It's really important that we have a workforce that's able to solve problems and that knows something about manufacturing as well. So here's a picture of our first mini maker fair, which was packed. I was really excited that we had over 1,000 people come to the first mini maker fair that we had, and about 60 vendors, and even more before that. Another thing that I want to bring up is how important it is to establish infrastructure for people to be able to come in and make, and for people to be able to collide, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's academians, whether it's corporate manufacturers. We kind of see this as these collision spaces as the future of innovation in Chattanooga. Just a year ago, we established our first innovation district, and the idea is bringing entrepreneurs and artists and academians together and makers together all into one area so that we can cross-pollinate ideas. One of the anchoring institutions in our innovation district is going to be an advanced manufacturing demonstration center. This is a space that we are locating at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. It's right in the heart of Chattanooga's new innovation district, and it's a space where makers can come and use lots of different advanced manufacturing machines, and it's also a place where local manufacturers can come practice R&D. We're also working with local schools to make sure kids can get in here as well. And this is something that we believe is going to be very important for the innovations that crop up in our city moving forward, especially around the maker movement. We feel lucky enough that we were able to get, state funding, and our local legislators worked with us to make sure that we had funding to pull something like this off, and we are moving the first machines in right now. So yeah, I would say that's really important to come together across sectors. I want to talk a little bit about some of the successes we've seen. You can talk a lot about, why is this important to a local economy, but you really have to see it making an effect. And in 2 years, we have. I guess since 2014 in Gig Tank, we've had 4 3D printing companies relocate to Chattanooga to be part of our 3D printing ecosystem and maker culture, which is something we were not at all expecting. But the energy that we were able to build around that first accelerator, pulling people into the same place, lasted. And these businesses in the Southeast saw Chattanooga as an opportunity to really grow their 3D printing businesses. They felt like it was a place that their business had a better chance of surviving in. Probably my favorite company that came out of Gig Tank is called Branch Technology, and what they do is construct prefabricated walls for homes. So they basically 3D print homes that can be assembled on site, and they've developed a new way of 3D printing. So they're able to develop freeform homes, is what they call it, and they hosted the world's first freeform design competition for homes. And the winning project looks like something out of a science fiction movie. I wish I had a picture and I could show you, but it's all curves and swirls and beautiful, and they're actually going to build that house in Chattanooga. One of the reasons that I'm really excited about that house being in Chattanooga is because it's going to serve as a physical emblem of what you can do with making and with 3D printing and with creativity, and when you bring art together with engineering and manufacturing. And I'm really hoping that this serves as I think my time's almost up, a symbol for us moving forward. We have a couple of other companies that have all raised their Series A round of capital, which we were really excited about. One is in healthcare. We have another that made custom fit footwear. She's now in San Diego. I'm going to be here for a little while if you guys want to talk a little more about our processes, but I just want to go over some quick takeaways. How we built the community and energy around a maker movement in Chattanooga was creating collision space. So that's AMAC, that's Gig Tank, that's where we are right now at this event, is making sure that people are networking and exchanging ideas, and that's regularly occurring, because that builds community. We invested very heavily in strategic partnerships. Again, we're a small city, and at our organization, we can't pull this off by ourselves, and our city can't pull it off unless we all work together. So strategic partnerships are very important. Establishing culture, the most important thing in my opinion, and then developing infrastructure for moving forward. We believe that the making movement really is going to impact the future of our economy and the way that we do business. And really excited to see what you guys are doing here. I'm really encouraged by all of the work and all the plans that are in place. So thank you so much for having me, and I'll be here for the rest of the day if you have any questions. Thanks.